So good to have you with us this morning. Man, what a day. We're dedicating babies. Next weekend is our baptism Sunday, so if you've not been baptized in water since you put your faith in Jesus, there isn't a better weekend for you to do it the next weekend. And if that's something you're like, hey, this year, I want this year to be different. I want to get things right with me and God. Maybe you've recently put your faith in Jesus. Then the next step for you is to be baptized in water. And if you haven't been baptized in water since you put your faith in Jesus, then man, I think it's something you really should do. And you can mark it on the connection card in the seat back in front of you, and we'll be ready for you next weekend. Or if you're like, hey, I can't do next weekend, then have no fear. We do it a lot, but you can mark it and throw it in the offering receptacle, and we will be ready to do your baptism whenever your time allows. But hey, so good to see you this Sunday. Man, I'm pumped. We're in the middle, towards the end of a series that we're calling Wisdom for Dummies. We're walking through the book of Proverbs just a little bit, taking some themes from that. And really with that idea, we've been using this verse as our framework, and it's Proverbs 12:15, and it says this, is the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. And really the thought behind this series is to say, hey, we want to be people who are wise. And if we want to be people who are wise, then part of being people who are wise is being people who seek out advice, being people who seek out counsel. If you want to be a wise person, you're not a know-it-all, you're not someone who's always like, I got this. But really, a wise person is someone who is willing to seek out counsel from other people. And you see that throughout Proverbs, that really that's the premise of this series is saying, hey, if we're the type of person that's seeking out counsel, then at some level we are willing to admit that maybe just a little bit we're a dummy. And so that's kind of what we're going for. But as we look at the topic this morning, it goes hand in glove with what we talked about last week. So if you missed last week, you maybe want to check it out because it pairs up really well. But last week we talked about money. And this week, we're going to talk about how you get money, which is work. So they work well together, if you see that. And I thought it'd be fun to go on our New Life, Community Life Facebook page. And if you're not on there, you should, because we do stuff like this from time to time, where I just said, hey, what is, to the New Life family, what is one of the strangest jobs that you've ever had? Okay, by the time I did this, I think I had 76 comments on that post, and then I checked recently, and I think we're over 90 now, and so I can't read all of them, so I'm just going to read the 5 that Kim said that she wanted me to read, and so these are those 5 right there. First one's from Kent Anderson, and it goes like this: 2 unusual jobs, the strangest jobs. 2 unusual ones: killing prairie dogs by dipping corn cobs in poison. And another painting propane tanks through Boyd County, Nebraska for a gas company. Man, dipping corn cobs in poison, that just sounds Nebraska, doesn't it? That just feels, it's cool, I'm from there, I can say that. All right, next one's Madeline Cole, and she said this: when I was in high school, I worked at a taxidermist shop, and I had to sort through vials of deer blood that would be sent off for disease testing. You're like, I don't know if I should laugh. I don't know what I do with that. Yeah, I know. I've never seen a vial of deer blood. I don't want to. Don't send me a picture. All right, here we go. Next one. Here we go. Darren Earhart. He's 16 years old, and when he was 16 years old, he had a summer job at the city cemetery, mostly mowing and trimming. But yes, we dug and filled in graves. By the way, graves aren't 6 feet deep. I think that right now is as good a time as ever to make a commitment to each other that we're not going to go figure that one out, okay? Don't you dare. Don't you go and start digging. If I see anyone with a shovel at a cemetery, I'm going to call the police. And so that's going to happen. All right, next one. This is Reuben James Carver. I was Chester Cheeto. I was always giving a picture. I was Chester Cheeto for a Frito-Lay promotion when Walmart opened up in Delano, California, circa 2014. And look at that. There it is. That's the living the dream right there. All right, the last one is this one from Jack Ward. When I was 12, a watermelon farmer hired some of me and my friends to pick his field of watermelons and load them on his truck. Instead of receiving cash at the end of the day, he drove us home and gave each of us a free watermelon. I don't know what you think about wages and wage laws, but I think we can all agree that a watermelon probably isn't fair compensation. But But hey, I bet it was delicious. Or it wasn't. It doesn't really matter. That's what you get. And that's what moral of the story is: know the terms before you pick the watermelons, I think. But no. But it shows that there's a lot. There's a lot of people had stuff. And then probably there are some that you're thinking about too, things that you did to earn money. And the truth is something that we all know. Is that working is part of life, isn't it? This is part of the deal, is that you work. And it's something that we all do. And if we're looking at 2025 and we're saying, hey, I want to crush it in 2025. I want this to be a year where, God blesses it and God helps us. And I think that a big part of us thinking in those terms is thinking, well, what are we going to do with work? Since work is something that we all do. And so I want to define work because I think it's really important, because I'm not just talking about a 9-to-5 or talking about what you do to get a paycheck, but really when the Bible talks about work, that it's much broader than that. And so just for the sake of our time, I do want to define work, and this is how I would define work this morning, is the means by which we sustain life and make discoveries about God's world. And so if you're here and you are a retired person, how are you doing that? If you are here and you are a stay-at-home parent, you can do that. If you're here and you are a student, then that would certainly apply as well. That if you're here and you're an employee, obviously that would apply as well. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about just overarching work. What are we doing with God's world? And there are 3 principles that I want us to look at from the book of Proverbs this morning as it pertains to what we do, really what we do. And the first one is this, is the first principle from Proverbs you see is that we should commit to working hard. That we should commit to be people who work hard. Now, I'm not talking about breaking your back, and I talked a little bit about that last week. That's why I think that message would help a little bit. But I'm saying that as far as people go, that if you are a follower of Christ, that if you're wanting to be someone who honors God with your life, then when you think about work, you should be the type of person that works hard. I imagine that probably all of us, right, have been part of teams in the past, or maybe like you go back to projects that you did in high school or things like that. On all of those teams, there was that one person, right? Didn't put in the effort that everyone else put in, right? You're like, oh, great, they're up, right? Like that kind of idea. And what you see in Scripture is you see that to live in a way that honors God is to not be that person. I was thinking about this Facebook reel I saw recently, and it was Tom Brady talking. 7-time Super Bowl champion, Tom Brady. And he was talking about when he was the backup quarterback at Michigan. And as someone who is a perennial backup their whole life, I can tell you that it's not very fun to be a backup. And one of the challenges that comes with being a backup is that you don't get as many reps as the person who is not the backup, who's the starter. That once the season starts going, really the way that it goes is the first team goes through the reps, they're ready, and then the backups get kind of the scraps because they're not really planning on you playing. And Tom Brady was talking about that, and he was talking about how when he was at Michigan, he was a backup. And he said, when I was a backup, I committed that whatever amount of reps that I got, I was going to go at those reps harder than anyone else on the whole team. So he's like, so if I only get 4 reps this practice, that I'm going to go so hard that the next time I get an opportunity to get some reps, they're going to give me 6 just by virtue of how hard I go. And I think that that's a really good principle for us to think about. He wasn't pouting about the hand that he was dealt, but he was saying, with the hand that I was dealt, I am going to commit to make the most out of what I can do with that hand. And really, that's how the Proverbs think we should look at work. It says this in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 4. It says this, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Man, I'll tell you what, like if you don't want the Bible to call you a sluggard. You don't want to be that guy that a sluggard really, like it's someone who is the personification of laziness. That Waltke in his Proverbs commentary, he talks about the sluggard. It's the type of person who, when you see them, you don't do business with them because they will destroy your business by doing business with them. That they're the type of person who good things might come their way, but because of how they respond to the good things that come their way, they don't get to experience those things. Waltke also points out that when it's talking about the sluggard, it's not talking about the poor. And that's important because in the Proverbs, when it talks about the poor, oftentimes it's talking about people who are dealing with circumstances that might be beyond their control. That just something happened. But the sluggard is in the situation that they're in because of either what they did or what they didn't do. The title of a sluggard, that it's such a bad thing that in the Proverbs, when it talks about a sluggard, it's not just like, oh, that funny guy who's lazy who doesn't work hard. That it's a moral issue to be lazy in the Proverbs. So much so that this point is talking about, hey, commit to work hard, that I could have worded it stronger and said, it is immoral not to work hard. That's the picture. That it's saying that when we work, if we are not giving it our best, then what we're doing is we're being immoral. Now, this is more than just telling us to work hard. There's also a value that comes with working hard that's pointed out here. The part of this proverb is to inspire us to be people who are diligent. And I like the way that Waltke describes the point that's being made here, and this is what he says. He says, every appetite of a diligent person is abundantly satisfied. This proverb assumes that everything needful in this life is richly available under God's good hand, but is non-existent for the sluggard. This is probably as good a place for any, for our weekly reminder that the Proverbs aren't formulas, they're more probabilities. But it's saying that this is what you can expect when you work that way. You can expect to be supplied and to experience all the good things that God has for you. So I think for all of us, it's worth asking the question, so what about your work? What about the things that you do? Do you work hard? I'm not saying do you love your job, because that's different, but do you work hard? Even maybe beyond that, a question worth asking is, okay, so do you have a good attitude about the things that you do for work? Or are you the type of person that is always quick to complain about the tasks that are before you or the jobs that you've been given? Another question worth asking is, are you the type of person that finishes projects? That when you start something, do you finish it, or do you start something and get bored and do something else? Talking to the people about maybe with their house, I don't know, but do you do that? I mean, another question worth asking too, as it pertains to your work, is when you work, like when you're at work, are you working? Or are you supposed to be working? I get it, guys. TikTok's back. It was gone for one day. And that creates challenges. But when you're there, when you're supposed to be working, what are you doing? Are you being diligent, or are you being a sluggard? What I think is interesting is it in this proverb, this one verse, when it talks about like being satisfied or being richly supplied, notice what part of the diligent is richly supplied. It says it in second part of verse 4. It says the soul. The soul of the diligent is richly supplied. It's not talking about your paycheck. It's not talking about the resources that come your way. No, it's talking about how you feel after the job is done. And it's saying something that we all know. That there's pride in working hard. There's a confidence that comes in a job well done. that there's something about working when you work in a way that when you go home, like there's a confidence that comes going home, being able to say, I gave it my best shot today. I did the most with the time that was given to me. And there's this sense too there where it's like, if I know that I did that, then it doesn't matter if other people didn't see it. God did. And his vision is the only one that matters. And so we see this idea that there's value in working hard, but there's also this part of it too, as you look at the Proverbs, that it's not just advocating for this idea of all grind, no mind. I'm going to trademark that. Just give me a second, okay? So don't do it. Don't you dare. And you see that here in Proverbs 10. It says this, he who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son to bring shame. A son who brings shame. Saying that there's a time to work, there's a time to sleep. Don't sleep when you're supposed to be working, and don't work when you're supposed to be sleeping. And what it's saying is a prudent person, a person who works hard, is a person who understands this reality. And there's this sense here too that with a harvest, there is an urgency that comes to the harvest, because once the harvest is over, you can't do it again. But I would just note, like, it's more of a picture than someone who's like, man, I've worked super hard today. I'm going to sleep in and get a late start tomorrow. The picture here in this example is someone who slept all summer. But they never got around to doing the work they were supposed to do. And what you see here in the proverb is that it's saying because they didn't work when they were supposed to work, two things happened. One is they brought shame. Notice it refers to them as a son. And it's this idea that when you don't work when you're supposed to work, you bring shame to your family, to those associated with you. So there's a shame that comes from not working well. Beyond that, you also see that there's also this is a failed business venture that came. And it's interesting because the business doesn't fail because there wasn't a harvest to be had. The business failed because the guy didn't work when he was supposed to work. Which shows us a reality about work that no one really wants to admit, but is really important to consider. And sometimes work doesn't work out. It's because of us. It's because of what we didn't do. It's because we missed an opportunity that was before us. It's because we weren't being wise with what was before us in the moment it was before us. And there's something incredibly powerful, even just to put yourself in the proverb, to realize that sometimes the things don't work. The best thing we can do is take personal responsibility. And the reason why that's the best thing to do sometimes is because if it's not you, then there really isn't anything you can do. I mean, just thinking about the guy who slept during the harvest in this proverb. I mean, if his story was like, well, I didn't succeed because so-and-so didn't give me the resources to succeed. Or if they were like, the guy at the barley factory was out to get me and he sold me bad barley. Or if he's like, I slept every day because the dang rooster never crowed. Like, I don't know, whatever his excuse might be. Whatever his excuse might be. If it's always someone else, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. You don't control them. But you know who you do control? You. And if he wants to have a different result next summer, then he needs to look in the mirror and start waking up on time. And I think for some of us, that's incredibly empowering because you do get to control yourself. So you see, there's this sense here where it's like, okay, there's that. And then there's also the resources that come from working. And this is what the Proverbs communicate. In Proverbs 12, it says, whoever works the land will have plenty of bread. But he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. It's saying, like, if you work hard, you'll be all right. And it's not, and Walt Key mentions, he's like, this is an agricultural example, but it applies to every legitimate industry. Saying that if you do the work, God will help meet your needs. Like that's the idea. But if you notice there's a second part, man. There's a second part. It talks about worthless pursuits. Worthless pursuits, which I think it's funny because that's always been a thing, that people have followed worthless pursuits to try to make money. Every time I play Toon Blast, I do the ads because I don't want to pay for more moves. And there are ads on there that are like, hey, just play this bingo game and you can make all this money. Like, you guys don't know because you guys are more you're praying when I'm playing Toon Blast, but I can tell you that that's there. It's a worthless pursuit. I mean, I think of like kids these days. You know, what do they all want to be? YouTube stars, right? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be YouTube famous. Maybe there's like 1,000 of them in the world, but maybe you'll be. But like it's a thing people go after. People they chase those things where it's like, I'm just gonna get rich real fast. And the idea there is like, don't follow things that are too good to be true. It's like the best way for you to be provided, it isn't chasing worthless things. The best way for you to be provided for is to work really hard at what you're doing. And you do that, be all right. Second thought is this, is that skillful work is rewarded. Skillful work is rewarded. That there's this quality of work that is rewarded in a way that mediocre work isn't rewarded. I keep thinking about this meme that's been floating around the internet. It's a horse, okay? It's a horse picture. I think you've probably seen it if you're on social media. And it's this guy right here behind me. You can tell where the good work happened and where the bad work happened, right? And if you can't, then art is not your thing. Don't pursue it, okay? That is a worthless pursuit for you if you're going for it. But you can see, right? I think it's funny how the legs keep being. I just noticed it's like there's that leg's just a stick in like a triangle. Like it's like we just keep getting worse is what I like about it. But I mean, right? Like okay, there's an intrinsic quality to that horse where you can see this is better than the other part, right? And one of the things the Proverbs communicate is that if you do work well, you'll be rewarded for working well. You'll be rewarded for doing a good job. I like the way that it says it. It says it this way in Proverbs 22. It says this. It says, do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Now, you can't get caught up in the saying as much as you got to realize what the principle is communicating there. But first off, it says this. It says, do you see? And the idea there with do you see is you should look for people who are skilled. Look for people who are good at what they do. Figure out what they're doing to be good at those things and learn from them. So there's this part even that fits with the series, Wisdom for Dummies, where it's like a fool thinks he needs to advise, a wise person listen to others. Like it's saying, find those people who have skills and learn from them. And as it's talking about standing before kings, it's not doing so as a reward for good work, but it's saying that when you're doing something that you're good at, people will find you. Honorable people will find you. That if there's something that you're really good at, the people who you want to work for, they'll seek you out. They'll find you. And because you're skilled at what you do, you won't be intimidated by the job, no matter who the person is that offers it to you. And even, it says you won't stand before obscure people. Okay, that the idea there, it's really interesting, but it's like he's actually talking about referrals. He's like, you'll do work for the king, and the king will say that you're good at the work that you're doing, and they will tell all of their friends, and what will happen is you will continue to be busy because people who are respected are going to say that you're good at the thing that you say that you're good at doing. which is kind of interesting because, like, what is the reward? It's more work. I was thinking about a conversation I had with a guy when he was a painter. We had him come and paint our house. And it was several years ago he came and painted our house, and I was like, hey man, could you come do this? And it was like, I think it took us like 3 months to get on his calendar. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's, okay, I'm glad you're busy. But then I was like, I never see any ads on social media. I never him and I never, I didn't see Facebook ads. I don't see him doing any marketing. I didn't even know the name of his business. He was just a friend of mine. And I was like, dude, why did it take 3 months for me to get on your calendar? Did you just not want to do the job? I mean, what's the deal? And he's like, well, man, I was like, I never see you marketing. And he's like, yeah, I don't have to because people just keep referring me to their friends. And he's like, I'm usually always about 3 months out because, well, I'm just known for doing a good job and people continue to refer me to get more work. And really that's kind of the sense here in the proverb is it's saying, hey, work like that at things that you're skilled at, and there will always be something for you to do. There'll always be a way for you to make a wage. So we see that skillful work is reward, and then finally we see this, is we see that we should work in a way that honors God. That we should work in a way that honors God. That it's important when you think about work, is that work is not like evil. Work is not intrinsically bad. That if you were to look at just like a biblical theology or what the Bible says about work, start to finish, one of the things that you'll see that the Bible is very pro-work. That if you go all the way back before the fall of man in Genesis 1 through 3, one of the things that you'll notice that Adam and Eve, they worked. They worked the garden. They weren't just napping all the time, but they were doing something. Then you think of Jesus, when he came into the world. And for 30 years, he had a job. He was a carpenter. He worked. And even if you go all the way to the end of the book, in the book of Revelation, one of the things that you'll see that when we are in heaven, we're going to work. It's going to be different. One of the things, I don't know what that's going to look like, and you can ask me after service, and I'll say, I'm not really sure, but I know that we'll be doing something. But I can tell you this, that in heaven, we're not in clouds playing harps, wearing diapers. There's a lot more to it than that. And we're also not a baby. It's that image is way wrong. There's things that we're going to do. And here's the thing, we're made to do stuff. But there's this thing, I think, with us where we think, I'm going to work super hard and never do anything ever again. And I don't think that's God's design. Sure, what you do with your time will change. It's going to look different when you're 20 than when you're 70. It's supposed to. Your 9 to 5 will not always be the same. But the idea that it's just we're not supposed to ever do, that is not a picture of God's design. And I think that we've all probably experienced that recently, I mean, think about your Christmas break. Probably had some time off, right? Things kind of slow down. I bet after those 2 weeks were over, because that's how it happened with the local school districts, you were probably ready to get back to some sense of normalcy, weren't you? I know that for me, when I have those breaks, that I find that once I cross a certain level of playing Toon Blast, it's sad, not fun, Because I was made for more than that, even though I am in the Champions League. And it's because we're made for more. You get that. You get kind of restless. You want to get back at stuff. That's part of what you're designed to do, is you're designed to work. And it's because God made you that way. I like the way the Proverbs say it. They say it this way in Proverbs 16. It says, commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. So work is something that God made good. And yet what we do is we make it a curse. We take something that God made, that God designed, that's part of God's plan, and we twist it in a way where it's no longer good, but it's cursed. There's all kinds of ways we do that. Maybe you're here and you're an employer, you're like a boss. One of the ways you can make work a curse is that you cannot pay people a fair wage. You work them too hard, don't give them enough, they struggle to get by when there's more there on the table and you just choose not to. That what you're doing is you're taking something that God made and you're making it a curse. Not just for that though, but it's also for workers. Gosh, it's also for workers. That we make work a curse. Maybe you're at a place where you really want to get ahead. You just said, I want to climb the ladder of this company that I'm at, or I want to be more successful than I am. And so what you do is you lie, you deceive people, you play politics, you do whatever you can just to get a little bit further ahead. That what you're doing in that moment is you're taking something that God made good and you're made it a curse. That anytime you work so much that you don't see your family, that you're not able to be with them, that you neglect those who you love, and you don't ever get to have any moments with them, that what you're doing is you're taking something that God made good and you're taking it and you're making it a curse. That we make work a curse anytime we just we just decide that we're not going to be satisfied in the positions that we're in. Where we sit there and we just, in the work that we're doing, we just long for greener grass. That when you do that, what you're saying is God, I am not satisfied with what you have given me. I remember talking to a guy one time and he was getting ready to switch jobs. And he was the same industry but different employer. And I was like, so why do you want to leave this job? And he was like, well, and he listed just all the problems at his job. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine that you have those problems, but here's what you have to realize. You're just trading those problems for different ones. And you might not realize it initially, but there are problems everywhere that you go. That we have to be really careful with this thought that the grass is greener somewhere else. Because it's not. I mean, even just to throw some cliches out there about greener grass, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. Justin Bieber. Another one is this, is the grass is always greener, especially when you're looking up. Another cliche is this, everybody wants the view, but no one wants the climb. That might have been Miley Cyrus, but that's still the point as it remains. That when you're dreaming about where you are not, even if you're not saying it, your dreams are communicating to God that, God, I don't think you've been good to me. Which is taking something that he gave you with work and made it a curse. Another way that we make work a curse, and this can be really tricky, but we can make our identity so tied to what we do that it's who we are. That who are you? I am what I do. And man, that's scary. Especially because you won't always be in that role. And if what you do is who you are, what do you do when that changes? Then who are you? Take something that's good and you make it a curse. When you're doing that, you're not committing your plans to the Lord. Also with work, whenever we just think of all the problems with work, and we never think about the good things that come as a result, the blessings that come. Whenever we do those things, we take something that God has given and made good, and we make it a curse. You know, one of the things I think about is I think about Jesus. And Jesus is a worker. And not Jesus the carpenter. We don't really know the stuff that he made. But I think about Jesus as a worker in terms of the ultimate job that he came to do. And it's The ultimate job that he came to do was to come and to live a perfect life, to die on the cross for our sins, and to raise from the dead and be with God forever. And he had to do all of that in order for us to be saved. But if he would have just came and lived a perfect life, there would have been something missing. But because he came and finished the work, that we can have hope that looks even beyond the things that we see. Jesus said it this way in John chapter 17. He said this, he says, I glorified you, God, on earth, having accomplished the work that you gave me to do. And so for all of us, the best example of work that we can think about is Jesus Christ, who walked out of heaven and worked for us so that we could come to know him and so that we could continue to get to know him better. Let's pray. God, we thank you. And God, I'm thankful for who you are. I'm thankful, God, that you love us. I'm thankful, God, that you provide for us, that you meet our needs, that you are with us. You know, and as I pray about us as people, like New Life, the New Life community, or those watching online, man, even as I've thought about this message, God, I pray that the Springfield community, when they hear that someone's from New Life, like I pray that that would be synonymous with people who work in a way that glorifies you. That we would be known as people who work hard, who do the things that we're skillful at, and do it in a way that doesn't bring a curse, but does it in a way that honors you as our plans are established. God, I realize there are probably people in this room or people watching online right now, and they hate their job. I pray that you'd help them to see that that doesn't mean they have to stay there forever, but God, that they would feel challenged to, while they're there, to be there and bring glory and honor to your name. God, help us to look at our world, whatever we do, and to say, God, it's all yours. God, we love you and we thank you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Love you guys.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us online today. We hope that this service was everything that you needed it to be. And if you would like to find out more about what's going on at New Life Church, check us out online at nlspringfield.com. From there, you can find out more about our staff. You can see upcoming events. And if you would like to give to New Life Church, you can go to giving.nlspringfield.com. Have a great week, everybody.